Hello students, welcome to week 3 for COM 405 Rhetorical Criticism. This week we are looking at rhetorical arguments, and we are looking at some of the factors that are most important in understanding how we need to reason and develop effective arguments within rhetorical analyses or criticisms. So as we're looking at the week 3 agenda, it's important to recognize that we are reading chapters 5 and 6. We're watching 3 videos. One of them is actual video that does a rhetorical analysis of the Coca-Cola Super Bowl commercial for 2016. The other 2 videos help you understand and further enhance your understanding of argumentation and identifying ethos, pathos, and logos. They're all definitely required and useful for the content we're going through this week within the chapters. We're also completing 2 assignments. We have our weekly review number 3, which is a discussion board and is due on Friday. Your original post is due Friday, and then your reply posts are due by Sunday. So we'll go through that in a second, and then the next thing you have to do this week is your rhetorical analysis artifact rationale, which you may think is very similar to your identification assignment, but there are some particular differences that we'll be highlighting in the instruction portion today. So as you look at your artifact rationale assignment, it's important to know that we've already identified what our artifact is, why we may be using it, why we chose it, and things of that nature. But now what we'll be doing is providing a strong rationale or reasoning for the use of the particular artifact. So what we're doing is we're diving a little more deeply than we did in our week 2 assignment of identifying our artifact, and now we're providing some strong reasoning for the artifact. What we're starting to do is constructing our argument for the artifact, and an argument that may be potentially used within our rhetorical analysis. So as you look through the assignment instructions, it's important that you're providing a rationale of the particular artifact itself, not necessarily a rationale for doing an analysis, but a rationale for the artifact. Why is this particular artifact useful in conducting a rhetorical analysis? That's the question you need to answer. So with this, you'll include information and aspects from your identification assignment. However, this form of information would be used only just to corroborate your assertions, your arguments. But primarily, I'm looking for you to tell me some ideological perspectives by identifying those perspectives and describing them in a detailed way that will aid in your rhetorical analysis of the artifact. If you consider ideological perspective, we know that ideology is how we make value judgments of the world based off of our underlying belief systems and worldview perspectives. So if you have a particular position on a political view on something, looking at that from an ideological perspective is determining how you constructed your decision about that particular topic. What led you to the belief in whatever it may be? So for example, if you subscribe to a Christian worldview perspective, you base the majority of your decisions and value judgments you make in the world based off of what the Bible tells you. That's your ideological perspective. So with that, in this particular assignment, you need to provide an ideological rationale for your artifact. You also need to explain how the artifact is useful within your rhetorical analyses and how you plan to connect ideological perspectives. One thing with an argumentation in rhetoric is understanding that there are different ideological perspectives and how they may intertwine or interact with each other in a particular argument. So with that, this entire piece is 200 to 300 words. It goes without saying that this is required in full APA. None of that's changing in terms of that perspective, and that it's really important that we understand how to utilize this within the body of the text. So as we move into our weekly review number 3, you'll be reading and critically evaluating the speech in pages 98 through 101. We'll be answering questions 1 through 5, and what this is designed to do is to help you start to analyze and look at something a little more deeply. Theoretically, the speech could be used as an artifact for rhetorical analysis or criticism. So with that, we're practicing and looking at this speech in more of an analytical way to help us synthesize and evaluate the information, yes, but to learn how we can start constructing arguments about a particular topic. Your original response should be no less than 350 words, must cite the textbook in full APA, as well as be posted no later than Friday to the discussion board, and all of your reply posts will be due no later than Sunday. You are required to reply to at least 2 other students with at least 100 word responses. As we get into argumentation, it's important to take a look at some of the particular uses of terms and the definitions of specific terms within this area. You'll find that within rhetorical argumentation, we use very specific language and terminology that helps us construct our arguments towards that. So for example, the first one is claims. A claim is really just an assertion that is the center or character of an argument. In a nutshell, it's really just that. Every claim is an assertion, and every assertion is a claim that goes beyond the facts, beyond what can actually be proved. In particular, a claim involves making a logical or inferential leap, and that you can jump to a particular conclusion on that belief based on few surface characteristics that seem to indicate what you may be talking about in a deeper way. So when we make claims, we need to make sure we have necessary data and information to back up our statement by distinguishing particular characteristics about whatever the artifact may be that we're analyzing. So it's really important to understand that. A special character of an argument is that if we can make a leap from the data to a claim, that's what our fundamental building block is in forming a rhetorical action. Really, it's giving us an it is also what gives us an argument is its force to show that these arguments make risking opens to challenging things within the world. So really what we're getting at is that if we're looking at that every claim is an assertion and every assertion is a claim that goes beyond the facts of what can be actually proved, we're understanding that we can take this inferential or logical jump or leap of faith beyond what the data is telling us to prove a point within our argumentation. This is supported by reason. Reason is an authorization or warrant for the leap made in an argument. So it's the leap made from a claim in an argument. It's also the grounds or basis for drawing conclusions within arguments. It's important to know that leaps made in argumentation is ordinarily not a blind leap made in ignorance. It's really made coming from evidence or data or justification or reason that we can utilize to make this leap. So in the distinction between making a leap and taking a leap from a claim, reason supports that leap of faith and saying it, and just to kind of highlight from that perspective. So really, it's important to know that we have to have valid data and evidence to support our claims, because that gives us reason and reasoning within our argumentation to support taking that leap or that jump into believing whatever our argumentation would be. And so getting into that, it's important to understand the use of discursive and non-discursive language. This is really important in understanding the dimensions of rhetorical action. So what we get into after we've made claims and we've identified a reason within our claims is to understand that we are leading our listener or our audience to understanding that we're making rhetorical action happen within our analysis. So remember, rhetoric is the study of all the processes by which people are influenced. Some of these processes may be logical or not, and that's where discursive or non-discursive language comes in. The dimension of rhetorical action is revealed in the mixture of qualities found within language used in a rhetorical argument. So each of these dimensions is a continuum that is really formed by a pair of qualities and such. The first of which is between discursive and non-discursive language. We're going between this pendulum of hovering under discursive and non-discursive language. Discursive language is information that can provide a direct logical link to your argumentation. Non-discursive information is information that is nonsensical or provides non-logical information. It kind of glitters and provides generalities that sound nice and adds fluff to our argument. We will get into that in a little bit more in a second. But to further understand this need for discursive and non-discursive language, we first need to understand our reasoning and argumentation. So as we look at this a little more deeply, you'll see that there are 4 types of reasoning within rhetorical action and rhetorical argumentation. This is actually found on figure 5.3 is found on page 115 of the text. And what it tells us is that an enthymeme is really an abbreviated argument, and the audiences must complete the argumentative cues by the rhetoric in order to understand that argument. So examples that you may use of this is really inviting participation. Audience like to draw their own conclusion, and it's an abbreviation of what the argument is, asking the audience to make those value judgments based off of what the rhetoric is telling them. So with that, you won't explicitly see or say a particular answer to the argument, rather you'll infer it. And the value of this type of reasoning is inviting participation and asking the audience to draw their own conclusions. Induction and deduction is a form of reasoning within rhetorical argumentation, where the inductive argument details examples in order to arrive at a larger claim, and deductive argument is presenting a claim as presumed truth or fact, and then proceeds to document how that claim is true. So if we look at inductive argumentation, a rhetoric will detail examples in order to arrive at a larger claim by seductively drawing audiences to accept the conclusion of the speaker. A deductive argument will ask the audience to presume the claim as truth or fact, and then the rhetoric will then proceed to document how that claim is true by providing straightforward appearance and logical rigor within their argumentation. So it provides some clear ways of understanding how you're going to get the audience to, or how you're going to persuade the audience about your particular conclusions within your argumentation. Casual reasoning asks to establish necessary relationships between two phenomena. It really adheres more to the scientific method in proving and disproving argumentations or logical claims within an argument. An analogy is comparing two phenomena in order to evaluate, predict, or dramatize the rhetoric's point of view. This particular value adheres to the jurisprudence or the courtroom model of argumentation, and sometimes that's what we most likely think of when it comes to making logical arguments and persuasive communication in a particular item. So these are the 4 types of reasoning we can use within a rhetorical analysis. You'll need to go through this in depth in the text this week and select one of them for your analysis of your artifact as we move deeper into the course material. So as we go back, and now we look at, once we've identified our particular reasoning type within our rhetorical argument, we'll need to develop rhetorical action. This is where we will structure and organize or provide strategies of proof within our particular argumentation. This is where the lens of non-discursive and discursive language comes in. So, for example, when we're constructing our language and how we're preparing to either write or orally present our rhetorical analysis, we'll need to identify a purpose. We'll either need to use discursive language, meaning instrumental or using language as a tool to logically explain something, or we'll need to use non-discursive language, meaning some type of consummatory language with a purpose and action in itself to non-logically justify our purpose. Our argumentation will need to be justificatory or ritualistic. Logically speaking, from discursive language, justificatory offers reasonings and proof of a particular item, where ritualistic is more performative and participatory arguments, relying on the audience to come in and give feedback as you're arguing, providing maybe some non-logical responses. So you're relying off of the feedback from the audience in order to justify what you're doing. Your structure will provide logical necessary links in your language. If you're using a discursive point of view or non-discursive language, we'll use associative, meaning you are deriving your structure of your argument from personal experience. You're planning on captivating the audience by telling some type of story within that structure of the storytelling aspect. Will create non-discursive language, but hopefully persuade your audience to believe what you're saying. Same thing with language, discursive language, logical language used within a rhetorical analysis offers a literal words or language that describes the world in a particular way, and language utilized in a non-discursive manner is figurative language. Your evidence within developing rhetorical action from a discursive point of view provides factual, verifiable information, where non-discursive or non-logical information appeals to needs, desires, and drives within the evidence presented. So you're relying on appealing to your audience with your evidence rather than providing factual, verifiable information. So as we go through this right here, it's important to understand, and this is also found on page 117, how this fits into the dimensions of rhetorical action. So for example, it's not necessarily negative or positive to use non-discursive and discursive language. Using logic and non-logical information in an argument is important at every step in your argumentation, in your paper or within an oral presentation. And the reason for that is there are some people in your audience that rely on logical, discursive information, factual, verifiable evidence, where others may rely more on or be more easily persuaded by psychological, non-discursive logical evidence, meaning it's appealing to their need, their drives, or their desires. So keep that in mind as you go through the material. The next thing we want to take a look at is strategies of proof. Strategies of proof provide every rhetorical argument to a logical argument through identification and participation of the audience. So looking for a strategy of proof within your particular rhetorical analysis is to make sure that your proof is mimicking a logical argument. The identification and participation of the audience, inviting the audience to provide material, will justify your claim and conclusion. And it's important to know that when we're utilizing strategies of proof, there's 7 particular things that we can do. So figure 5.4 on page 122 provides this an in-depth perspective. Particularly, I'm just going to highlight some of these proofs. So what you're doing is when you provide a strategy of proof is how you are providing information to your analysis that helps your argument and your audience be persuaded by what you're saying within your artifact. So you're presenting this artifact and you're analyzing it in this way, and you need buy-in from your audience to understand that you're making this justification that this particular artifact is supported by this particular theory. There are 7 strategies of proofs that you can use to do that. The first one is to ask a rhetorical question, something that's probative, maybe confrontational, that stimulates the audience or the rhetoric's position in whatever it is you're trying to prove. You can also use a fortiori, which is to the greater. It's a specialized analytical argument that says if something happened in one case, it's more likely to happen in another. You can also use enumeration, which is a long list of particulars designed to give overwhelming support to a claim. Refutation is stating the opposing argument and then showing why their opponent's case is flawed. Definition is utilizing a set of terms for debate, allowing the rhetoric to argue from a position of strength, where you're defining particular terms and using those particular definitions to your advantage. Enactment is living proof of the claim the rhetoric may be making. These are often difficult to deny because disagreement means you discount the authority and the proof found within the enactment. And turning the table is taking the opponent's argument and turning it against the opponent, really disarming the opposition and utilizing that in a way to disprove their claim and prove as a strategy of proof for your argument. So like I said, this is in detail on page 122 through 125. It's really important that you take a look at that on your own and determine what strategies of proof you may use for your rhetorical analyses yourself. As we're looking at information, it's also important to identify argumentative fallacies. And when we look at argumentative fallacies, it's really saying that argumentative strategies are inviting the audience to behave in less than rational ways. Fallacies within argumentation are potent persuaders because they mimic legitimate kinds of arguments, but they short-circuit the critical thinking process. So if you look at elaboration likelihood theory, it looks at how likely we are to critically evaluate information as opposed to passively accepting information. So argumentative fallacy is utilizing and tapping into that theory, elaboration likelihood theory. If we are critically evaluating information, we're stopping and looking for proof beyond whatever we can do. somebody accepting an argumentative fallacy is using the peripheral route within an aberration likelihood theory. They're saying, hey, this argument mimics a legitimate argument, so I'm going to short circuit the critical thinking process and get them just to peripherally or passively accept the information. To do this, you utilize a number of different types of fallacies within your argumentation. There's a number of them on page 125. I'm just going to highlight some of them. A straw argument is presenting the weakest point of the opponent's position as if it were the strongest. It's flipping the reverse. It's saying whatever may be the weakest and providing it as the strongest point to disprove what they're particularly saying about their particular argument. You can utilize the term begging the question, where the speaker assumes as already proven the very point he or she is trying to prove. You can make an appeal to ignorance, where the argumentation factor is asking the audience to accept solely because it has not been proven false, so it must be proven as truth. You can also use faulty cause and effect, asserting the cause and effectual relationship where one may not actually exist. A false analogy is used when two things are compared that are not alike in significant ways but presented as if they may be. Name calling is utilized in a way for discussing issues and to detract and defer from what the actual argument or issues are in a particular case. Hasty generalizations provide a position that has been reached based on insufficient grounds, and we're generalizing a particular topic in a way without looking at the topic more deeply, so we're just making a generalization of that. As well as glittering generalities, which uses feel-good phrases that seek immediate agreement just on the basis of accepting this passively. So as you look through the information within the chapter, it's really important that you take a look at what we have going on this week. As you've noticed here, we are reading chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 6 has some information on the construction of a thesis that we've already talked about, but what it really does is provide us with some phenomenal information to let us know why the thesis is so valued within a rhetorical argument or analysis. And really it's our central idea, so it's really important that you go through that within chapter 6 on your own. But for the sake of our discussion, we've discussed theses already. I'm not going to spend time on that right now. If you have any questions, let me know. Make sure you go through this lecture first and you watch all the videos and read your chapters, and then if you have questions about the assignments, definitely get involved with me at that point, because there's so much information to go through on Blackboard on your own. You should have plenty of resources to answer the questions in the discussion posed, but I'm always here if you need anything. Feel free to reach out. Remember, weekly review number 3 is due on Friday with reply posts on Sunday, and your artifact rationale for your rhetorical analysis is due on Sunday as well. I pray you all have a blessed week and contact me with any questions. Thank you.